Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And in case you've been under a rock, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs will be facing each other in the Super Bowl in Arizona. Again, first time in NFL history, two black quarterbacks facing each other. But we're going to go to the Philadelphia perspective on this episode. We're going to talk to Mr. OJ Spivey, who covers the Eagles for the Philadelphia Tribune. What's going on, man?
Hey Mike, thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for coming on. Now, I want to get people to get to know you just a little bit. So, I want to talk about your writing journey. Now, when did you kind of get started and get involved in writing?
Well, actually, it's been pretty new for me. Writing has been a shift in my journey, in my career in media and journalism. I started out as a radio guy, and when I wanted to get into this business, all I wanted to do was be a radio talk show host, be a sports talk show host. And I got to do that pretty much about a decade ago. Um, and I fell into that after I went to broadcast school. I decided that's what I wanted to do and tried to make that into a living. And ended up doing that for 4 years here in Philadelphia at one of the local stations here. But after that ended, in between, um, I got my start in writing, and it was just by chance. And a lot what happens in this business is being at the right place at the right time. And before I became a talk show host, I did what they call, we call it podcasting now, as we do now, Mike. But you go back about 15 years ago, this new platform was just called internet radio or online radio, to where you had this type of platform, and I did that for a couple of years, and that got me into doing radio here locally in Philadelphia. But back when I did that podcast, I had a guest on, and she was actually a beat writer for the Memphis Grizzlies, and she had since moved on to ESPN and became one of the editors there for ESPN.com. And one day, one Saturday morning, she sent me a message and said, "Hey, there's a there's a there's a panel discussion that's coming. That's going to be at Temple University here in Philadelphia, and Eagles defensive back Michael Jenkins was going to be part of the panel. So she needed someone to cover that and write a story on it. And this is for the undefeated now, Anscape as we know it now. But in those days, it was the undefeated, and it was just a story. So I'm calling around all my journal friends or journalist friends, who write for different publications, this, that, and the third, here in Philadelphia, and no one would pick up the phone. No one answered me. I got an answer machine or, a voicemail rather, or I got a no answer at all. No one picked up the phone. And I'm sitting there in a coffee shop, and I'm saying, okay, I'm just gonna, do this favor for a former guest of mine and everything who reached out. And then just something hit me. Maybe that was just God hit me on the head and said, you know what? Why don't you take a crack at this? Why don't you take a crack at writing? And I had really no formal training. Even when I went to broadcast school, it was more of a crash course. And that was more so on the technological side for radio and television. But I did have a crash course in journalism, with just the very basics. Um, but it happened that evening. I went up to Temple's campus, went to the panel discussion. I was nervous as heck. And mind you, I'm, already in my 40s at this point. I wanted to get in this business. Tried to break in this business about um, age 33, age 34. But I went down there that night and I got to interview Malcolm Jenkins, got to interview the other people on the panel. I went to write the story. I didn't know exactly what the heck I was doing, but it worked out because I did do some blogging before for different websites. Good friend of mine who was a local DJ. I did some blogging for her website. But 24 hours later, I had a story on a national publication, The Undefeated. And from there, I was able to do a handful of stories with them, anywhere from, again, interviewing Malcolm Jenkins, interviewing Kevin Hart, and then the pinnacle of that was interviewing Julius Erving, Dr. J, who was my childhood idol. And that was an experience in itself because I'm looking face to face at someone who I grew up to watch. I grew up watching to play, and I'm like, okay, this is full circle here. Like, what is going on? Like, this is Dr. J. So, and it's a funny story with that too. That I'll get into it another time because he had a golf gala that he holds every year, charity event every year, and I was supposed to interview him. I was supposed to interview him during a Big Three tournament because the Big Three, they
Right.
do the they do the they do the circuit, different cities every year, and that particular year they came into Philadelphia, and I went down there to interview him after because he's one of the coaches. I went down there to interview him after the game, and kind of find out he doesn't do interviews. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I called the editor. I said, okay, what am I going to do? And again, this is just all the journey of just being a journalist. Like everything goes well until you can't get the interview that you want. You can't get the story. But anyway, as people reached out to me, and about a month later, I was able to interview Dr. J. But basically, that's how my journey started in journalism. And then a few years later, within these past couple of years, I made a stop at the Tribune where I am now, and I'm writing different stories and everything, and just writing here locally for one of the longest running Black publications in the country. That's a blessing for me too because I'm in touch with my community as well, and I get to do another one of my dreams, and that's to cover my local teams, especially the Eagles, and of course their Super Bowl run. So that's basically the cliff notes of it. It can get a little deeper than that, but that's just my journey, and I often tell people as well, and as I've told you off air, that my journey is still ongoing. As a 50-year-old Black male in this business, my journey is still ongoing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, definitely, I don't have very much formal training as well. So I kind of learned a lot of by trial and error and reading other
Sure.
people like Bill Roden and people like that, just kind of learning from there. So
I got to
I'm
meet him, by
definitely
the way, but at the NFC
mhm,
Championship game, and I wasn't expecting him there. I mean, I should have because just everybody comes for those games, just all around the country, national columnists and everything. So, and he was great. He was very, very gracious to me. So, keep on reading those guys like that and all. And again, just as far as sharing my journey and everything, I do that for people as yourself, both Black men and women who are just trying to navigate through this crazy business because it is crazy, and just trying to get your foot in the door in different places.
right, right. Now, we did get everyone to get to know you a little bit, but we want to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles as well. So
Sure.
I've got to understand. I've got to ask you, since you've been there the entire season, what is it? What was it like watching this team this year for you?
It was amazing, and it just seemed to get more impressive week by week. And of course, they started out, what was it, a 8-0, 9-0 before their first loss. But it was very impressive to just not only see this team evolve, but to just see them dominate their opponents for the most part. And and the pinnacle of that, I won't say not the pinnacle, but the core of that is, of course, quarterback Jalen Hurts, who is on the verge of going 17-0 if he, takes care of business in the Super Bowl. And his evolution alone was just amazing. And you've talked about this before. I've talked about it. We've been on Jalen's side at the very beginning. So when he was drafted back in 2020, and he just, in my opinion, he just needed time. And the Eagles thought enough about him, they thought enough of him to surround him with players like AJ Brown, um, Devontae Smith on defense, Hassan Reddick, and those guys to just make a run at it. And you see what has happened. And, these guys are on the verge of this franchise is on the verge of winning their second Super Bowl in 5 years. So it was just fun to watch. And it's even just fun to watch these guys in the trenches, just the offensive line, defensive line. They're well coached, all those things. And also interviewing these guys. And, they just stayed focused the whole time. They stayed, each week I go down in a locker room after games, and their mood doesn't change, their focus doesn't change, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do come Super Bowl Sunday.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely looking forward to seeing it. Now I got to ask you, what surprised you the most about this team this year?
What surprised me the most, probably the ease the ease of how they've won a lot of games, most of their games, how they're just taking people off the ball in the trenches. Again, both the offensive line and defensive line, they're just controlling the line of scrimmage, and that's the most fun thing to watch. And I knew the offensive line is the probably the most seasoned and the unit that has the most experience. And sometimes you think, okay, is somebody like a Jason Kelsey getting old? Is Lane Johnson getting old? I mean, but these guys are all playing like they're, 3-year veterans, and you wouldn't think. And again, it goes back to them being well coached. And also, I would even say another surprise to me is the player Hassan Reddick on defense. And we thought he would get, a few sacks. We thought he would get maybe, some double-digit sacks and everything, which he set an NFL record, getting double-digit sacks for 3 different teams in 3 different years. But for him to be on the cusp of not only breaking a franchise record, but also flirting with the NFL record, and not only just the sacks, just the way he's just been dominating on defense. And you've seen that in the playoffs, what he did to Daniel Jones with the Giants. He literally knocked out both San Francisco quarterbacks, the only 2 healthy quarterbacks that they had. You saw that. And, I thought he was good, but I didn't realize how great a player that he is and what a fantastic athlete he is. So, the trenches with both lines, and probably even more so Hassan Reddick.
Gotcha. Okay, now you tapped on it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to go into talk about Jalen Hurts. Now, of course, lots of talk about him going into this season. Of course, with the finish down in Tampa Bay, wasn't very impressive. People were thinking, oh, they're going to go get a veteran quarterback for this team. They need one. But they stuck with him. So, he got a lot of criticism going into this season. Now, in your opinion, do you think it was kind of warranted? I mean, he handled it with class, I will say. But in your opinion, do you think some of the criticism was warranted, or do you think that's more of kind of the stigma of what people think about black quarterbacks?
Yeah, it's one thing to criticize, criticize a player, criticize an athlete overall and everything, but it was just the way he was criticized. And, when it comes to black quarterbacks, and, we see it with Lamar Jackson, we've just seen it over over decades now. And going back to, I'm old enough to have seen Randall Cunningham play, in his prime. With the Eagles and everything. And the same thing I heard 30 years ago, or the same things that I heard about Jalen Hurts. It's like, okay, he can't read defenses. You got to play in a pocket. It's a thinking man's position. He's just a running quarterback. You know all the phrases, right? So that's what it was. And it got pretty nasty. And it's one thing to hear it from a national perspective, because, most of those guys are talking heads, but from a local perspective, even with some of the writers here and everything, it was nasty work. And, most people just thought he was just going to be a bridge for the next guy. And another thing you have to understand and put in perspective is the last guy that was here, Carson Wentz. Eagles invested a lot of resources in Carson Wentz. They moved up twice in the draft. As you remember, when they picked them in 2016, the second pick. And then after that, after the Super Bowl run, uh, they gave him an extension, a huge extension, right? And he was deemed to be the quarterback of this franchise for at least a decade, maybe even 12, maybe even 15 years, as you see with, a lot of quarterbacks in this league with longevity. And when that didn't happen, when it got ugly so fast, you heard reports about him being difficult, being uncoachable, being coddled, being spoiled. And the very day that Jalen Hurts got picked, and even more so the very day that he walked into their facility, he exuded that locker room from day one. And the players that have confirmed that he exuded that confidence. And you probably know Mike, and just even like in a corporate world and everything, and you're in a conference room, or you're at a convention or something like that, and a person walks in, they have that presence. It's that quiet confidence, and that's what Jalen Hurts exuded the entire time since he walked into the Eagles facility. And Carson could not handle that. And when you also in a room with someone who's a little bit insecure, that cannot end well. And that's pretty much what happened with Carson Wentz, and he ended up demanding a trade. It affected his play, for one, which was critical, and number two, it forced him to, he forced a trade for the Eagles, which, and mind you, they did not want to trade him. They did not, because they had invested so many resources in him. But getting Jalen Hurts for insurance, that was basically what their objective was in getting him. And you even said that you think he would play. I thought he would get some run in his rookie year, but you just see the evolution now. And again, the criticism is that a lot of people just didn't want him here, because they knew that the Eagles had invested so much in Carson Wentz, and there was just a lot of Carson Wentz fans here, and they just did not want to. And who knows, maybe we've had enough black quarterbacks here in Philadelphia, going back to, Vic, McNabb, Cunningham, even throw Rodney Pete in there and everything. Even though after Jalen had that terrible game versus Tampa Bay, they wanted to get Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson in here. Just anybody but Jalen. It got that bad.
Mm. Mm. So, with that being said, how have you noticed his development from last season to this season?
I think that's just basically putting the work in. Well, a couple things. It's putting the work in, and it's time. Most quarterbacks in this league don't hit the ground running. Most of them don't come into the league and be blasted out of a cannon. You see it in some instances with some rookies and all. I mean, you look at Patrick Mahomes' first year. He played very well, but he wasn't there yet. It wasn't really till his second year specifically that he became what we know as today as arguably the best quarterback in the league. And Jalen just needed time. And another thing that people failed to realize, and it was clear cut, but people failed to realize, and they just used it as an excuse, or thought that it was an excuse, that this year, 2022 season, is the first year that Jalen Hurts has been in the exact same offense with the exact same offensive coordinator since his father in high school, since playing for his father in high school. And people were just dismissing that as, that's not a factor. And in this league with quarterbacks and everything, consistency is key. Doing the same routine, having to learn a new offense year after year after year. And we've seen that with even other quarterbacks where they've struggled, not having consistency, not having stability in key positions. First of all, head coach, also offense coordinator, quarterback coach, all those things. Quarterbacks need that consistency to even just learn an offense. And his second year in the system, and he pretty much had told people that, it's my second year in the system. I'm much more comfortable, and you see what happened, and
right.
Just by that alone, and also he putting the work in. Throws that he made last year, the throws that he struggled with last year. As soon as I saw it in training camp, it was like night and day. Out patterns, throws across the middle, even getting the ball out quickly, more quickly, and everything. That was all improved in the beginning of, in just first week of training camp when I was there. You saw that improve. I said, okay, um, he looks like a different quarterback, and he really put the work in. So that's all the changes. And the question at that point was, again, still a lot of skepticism, but the question was, will that translate into the regular season? And boy, did it translate.
Definitely did. I'm very happy to see it. I told people when he got drafted that he's going to be all right. He's going to develop, and he could potentially be a starter for them. And people looked at me like I was crazy, or
Yep.
like I had three eyes.
Yeah,
So
exactly. I remember you were on it from the beginning. So,
yeah.
did I think that he was going to be particularly an MVP candidate? No, I did not think that. I didn't even think that they would reach the Super Bowl before the season. I knew they wouldn't win the division. I knew they would make some noise in playoffs, maybe win a game or two. But I was trying to uh, excuse the term, curb my enthusiasm as far as the Eagles reaching the Super Bowl, because there were some people saying it at the beginning of the season, especially when they started out 8-0, 9-0, and so forth. But I was like, okay, sometimes it's just a maturation process, it's just moving up the hill. Some teams they'll get a sniff at the playoffs, get blown out, and then they come back next year, they make some noise, and then maybe it's the third year where you try to finally get over the hump. But it's a testament to the organization. GM Howie Roseman, he put all his chips in, but he did a fantastic job doing this, putting all the chips in and going for it this year with key free agent acquisitions. But this team is set up to be good for a while. They have two first-round draft picks in this upcoming draft in April, and the core of the team is still very young, and that starts with Jalen Hurts.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Indeed, it does. Now, there is another team that is going to be playing on Sunday, and that'll be the Kansas City Chiefs. And of course, they will be taking on each other in the desert, Phoenix, Arizona, the State Farm Stadium, Arena, whatever. But
Right.
anyway, it's in Phoenix. But the biggest thing that a lot of people have been talking about is the trenches. Of course, Philadelphia's offensive and defensive lines are definitely very, very good. I mean, some consider the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line the best offensive line in football. That would be me as well. I'd be those people. But they have one guy they have to worry about. One guy I would say that I wouldn't say one guy, but I say one guy they need to focus their attention on. His
Right.
name would be Chris Jones. That guy's a monster inside, and they move him around outside as well. So in this game, with the injuries to Lane Johnson he's playing through, and just kind of a little banged up inside. How do you do you have a level of concern about what Chris Jones could potentially do to the interior of that offensive line?
Not really. It doesn't take away the great player that Chris Jones is, and I believe he's a Defensive of the Year finalist this year. He's a great player. He's a pass rusher, great pass rusher, causes a lot of havoc, and similar to what the Eagles do on defense, but they have a number of guys starting with Reddit. But I'm not overly concerned because what I saw 2 weeks ago against San Francisco. Arguably the person who may get defensive player of the year, Nick Bosa. I mean, they moved him around like a coffee cup. And if you have to say, probably, if you really have to say who is the weakest link on that Eagles offensive line, it might be Jordan Mailata, but Jordan Mailata was the one who pancaked Bosa. So even if they move Chris Jones around, he really doesn't have a great matchup where you say, okay, this is a game I'm going to get a sack here. I mean, things collapse in the pocket sometimes, linemen make mistakes and all, but they're very well coached with their offensive line coach, Jeff Stoutland, who they just gave a contract extension to. But if you go down that line, there's really not a weakness. And they do a great job of helping too. So if they have to chip someone, guard has to chip, come out and chip with the tackle and everything. They just always know what to do, where to go. And that's part of what makes the Eagles offense tough to defend because, I mean, they're just so smart, athletic, and physical up front, strong as well, to where, you know, if Chris Jones is basically your only pass rusher, they have a number of ways to neutralize him.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, of course, you mentioned Hassan Reddick, who has had a great year. And, of course, they list him as a linebacker in the starting lineup, but he really is an edge pass rusher. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Right.
Now, do you think it's more Hassan Reddick or the scheme or a combination of both that's allowing him to be as great as he has been this year?
Well, that's a great question because that was actually the question coming in, the way the Eagles play defense, which is you can look at the surface that they're pretty a conservative defense and they don't blitz a lot. They rely on their front four to get pressure. And the question coming in when they picked up Reddick was, okay, how is Jonathan Gannon going to use him? And even after the first couple games, actually, I think it wasn't until the second or third week that Hassan Reddick started getting sacks. And I asked Reddick, and I said to him, I said, "Are you comfortable now in this defense?" He said, "I'm always comfortable. I was always comfortable." Just things happen within games, but he said he was always comfortable. And it's so funny because Jonathan Gannon was interviewed a couple weeks ago, and he joked around. He said, "Listen, Reddick would probably have more sacks if I didn't drop him back in coverage sometimes," which he does on a consistent basis. So probably about maybe 10-15% of the time you'll see Reddick in coverage. But if you find a matchup, they find a matchup and everything, he's going to get after the quarterback. But that was just one of the lingering questions coming in. How will they use him? Because again, being an edge rusher, you kind of look more like a blitzer, when you are coming off, when you're coming off that corner on tackles and tight ends and everything, but it's worked to perfection. So.
All right. Now they're going against this Kansas City offensive line, and I kind of have visions of what happened when they were going against Tampa Bay in terms of Kansas City, and he was kind of running around. Patrick Mahomes was, and he threw that pass laying adjacent to the ground, and it was a bullet, and it hit Mecole Hardman right in the face mask. But I kind of envision that potentially happen in this game, given that the Kansas City offensive line hasn't necessarily been great. Do you kind of envision some of that, or do you kind of think they'll hold up a little bit better than those guys did that year?
Well, that's the goal for the Philadelphia Eagles. And the scary thing is that they're so deep with the defensive line. Basically, your starters was that Reddick, Josh Sweat, Fletcher Cox, and Javon Hargrave. If you get past those guys, you still got Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph. You got those guys coming in. So they're very quick to rotate their defensive line and keep everybody fresh. That's just a philosophy that the franchise has had for years. So they just have an abundance of defensive linemen, pass rushers that'll get after the quarterback. And, we're not even talking about the rookie Jordan Davis, who's a very good run stopper, by the way. Not that, Andy Reid will probably run the ball much, but they just give so many problems. And again, that defensive line is strong. It's physical. It's athletic. They know what to do. Even old man Brandon Graham has had double-digit sacks for the first time in his career at 34 years old. So it's really tough to kind of key in on one guy. Let's say if they try to double-team Reddick, that's going to leave Josh Sweat open. That's going to leave Brandon Graham open. And then God forbid they put anybody but a tackle on a Hassan Reddick. And I called what Shanahan did 2 weeks ago as coaching malpractice. I mean, just watching for the press box, I couldn't believe it. Yeah, it's a wonder that he took out both quarterbacks because it was that easy. It was taking candy from a baby. But overall, that's the thought process for the Eagles to just kind of contain Patrick Mahomes, get him going to his left. Of course, that's where his injury is and everything, where he can't plant and all, and just kind of force him to, throw the ball when he doesn't want to, and hopefully cause some mistakes.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned him, and I'm going to mention him. Patrick Mahomes. Some call him Jordan Cleats. I'm talking about Bomani Jones. Bomani Jones calls him Jordan. But, how uncomfortable does he make you feel back there playing quarterback against your Eagles defense?
Well, I feel uncomfortable because I'm feeling kind of superstitious because I don't believe, I'm going to go into the fact that he's not as hurt as he's leading on, or as the team is leading on, because he can do so many things, and he's really the quarterback that breaks all the rules. And when he breaks the rules, it's like he makes it look easy. He's the ultimate improv at the quarterback position. He can literally throw a pass behind his back and it'll be a completion. We always know about his no looks and everything. He doesn't have to be planted on 2 feet and traditionally throw the football because he's made a career out of it. So that's scary in itself. He can just flip it, behind his back, through his ear, like a Harlem Globetrotter, however, and just make the perfect pass to Travis Kelce. So for the Eagles' sake, they just can't take anything for granted about his injury and all. Of course, they're going to try and test it out and everything because he's basically a chameleon. Somebody had said that. I heard somebody say that earlier today. He's a chameleon. So he's going to give it his all. And again, what you mentioned, you hope that it's a reenactment of the Super Bowl they played against Tampa Bay, and they'll be able to get after him. But yeah, he, just by his very presence on the field, is scary because he can make chicken out of chicken crap. So always.
I hear you there. Now, you do have the best, to me, in my opinion, you have the best duo of corners in the NFL, Bradbury and Slay. So with them being out there, do you expect them to kind of mix up a few different coverages per se, or just kind of stick to the things that they usually do to try to throw off Mahomes?
Well, it's going to be interesting what they have the cornerbacks do, but I think overall, you have to mix it up against Mahomes. You just can't play one defense. You can't be in one base with him. You have to give him some different looks, and that's all the more reason to try to contain him in a pocket, get him to move where he doesn't want to move, make it uncomfortable with his so-called injury, and also again, you just can't play one way against Patrick Mahomes because he's going to eat you up, and he's made a career out of it, and that's why he's probably is going to win the MVP because again. He's just a mastermind of how you play the position.
He definitely is. And he definitely keeps defensive coordinators up at night every single week.
Right.
All right. We have reached the end of the show, but we have not reached the end of the actual podcast yet because there's a game. We got 5 questions. I got 2 answers for you, and you got to pick one choice. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Who has more yards on Super Bowl Sunday?
Oh, oh man, you started with a tough one. Let's see, because both of them can equally do that, and that's a great prop bet too. I'm going to say A.J. Brown.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna hold you to that one. It's on tape. But
yes.
I'm kidding.
Pull out the tape.
But but it is. I'm not about the tape,
Receipts.
but I am. I'm joking. But let's see, Reddick or Fletcher, who has more sacks on Sunday?
Definitely Reddick.
Fletcher Cox. Okay. Cool.
Definitely Reddick.
Okay. Got you. Now Mahomes.
It could be
go ahead. I'm sorry.
It could be by default if Reddick is double teamed, but I think definitely I think Reddick gets at least 2 sacks.
Okay. All right. Maybe he goes against Orlando Brown Jr. because he kind of been playing for a contract, but he ain't necessarily been like the shutdown left tackle that everyone thought he would be going there.
Right.
Mahomes or Hurts? Who throws for more yards?
Mahomes, but that's not that may not be commiserate to the game's outcome. But I'll say Mahomes.
Okay. All right. Goddard or Juju? Who has more yards receiving between those two?
I'll say Juju because I think Brown will get more of the action.
Okay. All right. And the last one for you. This is a musical one. I'm pretty sure you'll like this one. We got Lil Uzi Vert, Just Wanna Rock, or Meek Mill, Dreams and Nightmares. Now, I know both of those songs have been talked about when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. So you got to go with one. With this team, which one are you picking?
It got to be Lil Uzi Vert. Got to be. Got to leave Meek. Love Meek and everything. Got to keep him back in 2018. That's different time, different team. Every artist, everything song has a season and everything. You got to go with Lil Uzi Vert. Got to go with it. I want to rock. Got to go with it.
I was like, man, I didn't know what that song was. I've heard this song. I cover Tennessee State University basketball. So I'm at the games and I hear this song.
Yes.
And I'm like, and I see the kids jumping up and doing this dance. And I'm like, what is, I kind of didn't pick up on it. So I'm like, okay, now I actually, paid attention, did a little looking into it. And I'm like, okay, this song is not bad. Okay, find yourself actually want to move a little bit.
Listen, we both have daughters, and I'm pretty sure they're doing the dance now too. So mine's a little older than yours and everything, but yeah, she picks it right up. But just from what I've seen with Lil Uzi Vert, already being a part of the team, running out with them during the NFC Championship game and all, and playing it. Even the Eagles put it on social media and everything. I'd be very shocked if that wasn't the song.
Gotcha. I was very intentional when I kind of put out who was coming on the show this week. I was very intentional with the song I picked, by the way.
Love it.
All right. Well, that is the end of the show. And I want to thank you, Mr. OJ Spivey, for coming on the show. If you can, give everyone where they can find you on social media and any things that you are currently working on.
Okay, yes. So you can always follow me. I'm on Twitter all the time, maybe too much. At OG Philly. That's most of my social channels. OG Philly on IG if you want to bother me there. Also, my Facebook page, OJ Spivey -journalist. I put up a lot of my material and my articles basically on there. And of course, you can find my work with the Philadelphia Tribune at phillytrib.com.
All right. You heard it there. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for coming on, Mr. OJ Spivey. This has been another episode. Yes, sir. This has been another episode of Touring the AFC South. Go ahead, tune in, subscribe, like, share, whatever, whatever social media allows you to do. And, we'll see you right back here next week on Touring the AFC South. We're out.